In the choking fog of 18th century cities, where smoke curled like serpents through the air and the clang of iron was the heartbeat of progress, a revolution was born, not from the hands of kings or scholars, but from the rough palms of men and women whose names history chose to forget. They called it the Industrial Revolution, a storm of machines and ideas that tore humanity from the rhythm of the land and thrust it into the pulse of modernity. But beneath the thunder of steam engines and the gleam of ironworks lay the hidden architects of that transformation, the anonymous inventors, the silent experimenters, the dreamers without titles who built the bones of the world we now inhabit. The story often begins with James Watt and his steam engine, with Arkwright's spinning frame, with Stephenson's locomotive. But those legends are only the tip of the iceberg. The true revolution was forged in backroom workshops, in dimly lit cottages where sparks flew not just from metal, but from imagination. It began in Britain in towns like Birmingham, Manchester, and Glasgow, where the poor tinkered with scraps and turned them into wonders. John Kay's flying shuttle was perfected by weavers who never wrote their names. The spinning jenny, attributed to James Hargreaves, was improved by nameless mechanics who figured out how to make it faster, steadier, better. Every invention was a chorus, not a solo. And yet, as the age of machines roared on, credit was gathered like gold by those who could afford to claim it. Patents were the privilege of the literate, the connected, the wealthy. The working genius, the blacksmith who experimented at night, the woman who wove new patterns into the loom. They remained in the shadows of the men who stood at society's top. But invention is never born from one mind alone. It spreads like fire through contact, through curiosity, through necessity. Across Europe, the flame spread. In France, in the workshops of Lyon, silk weavers modified Jacquard's looms long before his name became immortal. In Germany, humble clockmakers in the Black Forest shaped the gears that would one day guide automation. In Italy, craftsmen in Venice experimented with glass and metal alloys that later made precision instruments possible. The revolution was not one event, but a symphony, each note played by a different hand, each echo carrying across continents. And while Europe forged its engines across the seas and lands often written out of Western history, other minds were dreaming parallel dreams. In India, centuries of metallurgical mastery had produced Wootz steel, so pure and strong that it baffled British scientists. The very foundation of modern machinery owed its durability to techniques developed by unnamed Indian smiths long before factories rose in Manchester. In China, artisans had used water-driven machinery since the Song dynasty. Their hydraulic bellows and spinning wheels were whispers of industrial logic before Europe ever coined the term revolution. Even in Africa, in places like the Kingdom of Benin, metalworkers cast intricate brass and bronze sculptures using techniques so advanced that European visitors in the 17th century could hardly believe they were handmade. Yet history would soon silence those achievements, folding them into the myth of Western progress. The British Empire, hungry for resources and markets, rebranded the collective ingenuity of humankind as its own miracle. But behind the imperial narrative there was a network, a global chain of ideas, labor, and experimentation that made the industrial age possible. Ships crossing oceans carried not only cotton and coal, but knowledge. Every spinning wheel in England was tied by invisible threads to the plantations of India, the mines of Africa, the mills of the American South. And behind each product was a human story, of toil, of innovation, of uncredited brilliance. The steam engine may have carried Watt's name, but it was a Cornish blacksmith, Humphrey Gainsborough, who designed an early model that inspired him. The locomotive may be linked to George Stephenson, but hundreds of nameless miners and engineers refined the tracks, the boilers, and the pistons that made motion smooth. The cotton gin may bear the mark of Eli Whitney, yet enslaved African craftsmen in the American South built and improved its design to survive brutal production demands. In every corner of the world, hidden inventors turned hardship into creativity. They were driven not by fame but by necessity. A mother finding a faster way to weave to feed her children. A miner building a tool to ease his back-breaking labor. A mechanic dreaming of efficiency while soot blackened his lungs. These were not men and women of letters, but of endurance. Their minds were their only machines, and their greatest fuel was survival. As the revolution thundered on, Factories rose like cathedrals of iron. The air grew thick with soot and ambition, but in those temples of progress, the invisible workforce remained faceless. The machines that defined the age were often built by people who couldn't afford to use them. The same hands that crafted the gears and wheels could barely afford bread. And yet within that struggle, innovation thrived. In the mills of Manchester, teenage girls, mill lasses, they were called, learned to fix thread spools with astonishing precision. Their unrecorded adjustments to machinery reduced waste, increased efficiency, and quietly revolutionized textile production. But their names vanished the moment the shift whistle blew. In the Caribbean, freed and enslaved workers built sugar processing devices out of broken ship parts, creating crude prototypes of mechanical rollers that would later be perfected in England. In Japan, during the late Tokugawa era, craftsmen reverse-engineered Dutch scientific tools and built their own mechanical clocks decades before industrialization officially reached Asia. These hidden inventors existed everywhere, in the alleyways of London, in the rice fields of China, in the deserts of Egypt where engineers adapted water wheels for irrigation, in the villages of Africa, where blacksmiths forged tools more efficient than anything European traders could offer. They were the silent pulse of progress, the unacknowledged force beneath history's loudest machine. As Britain's empire expanded, so too did its myth of invention. The Industrial Revolution became a story told by the victors, a tale of great men, of lone geniuses who changed the world. But the truth was never that simple. Every discovery was layered upon countless others, built by many who could not read, who could not patent, who could not even sign their names. For every Watt or Stevenson, there were hundreds of unknown minds who lit the path forward. The real revolution wasn't in steam or steel. It was in the democratization of thought, in the awakening of human curiosity across every class and continent. As the century turned and machines replaced muscles, humanity stood at a crossroads. The same ingenuity that could power progress could also deepen inequality. And at the heart of that paradox were the hidden inventors, those whose brilliance was consumed by the very system it helped create. By the mid-19th century, the world had become a roaring furnace of progress. Iron rails slicing through landscapes, ships of steel cutting across oceans, cities glowing under the newborn light of electricity. Yet the silence of the forgotten inventors grew louder. History's pages turned faster than their names could be written down. Steam, once a miracle, had become a weapon of empire, and machines were no longer symbols of freedom but of control. In the shadow of industrial power, millions toiled, and among them, countless creators labored unseen. In a cramped workshop in Lancashire, a boy no older than 15, his hands raw from metal filings, devised a small lever that stopped weaving looms from breaking thread. His name was never recorded, but the mechanism became standard in factories for decades. In France, a seamstress modified a crude hand-cranked needle machine to stitch faster and more evenly. Her idea quietly traveled to America, where Elias Howe and Isaac Singer would patent similar designs. In the soot-black skies above Birmingham, artisans hammered and soldered parts that would form the skeleton of the modern world. Bridges, locomotives, engines, while the men who assembled them died unknown. Their sweat turned into progress, their dreams melted into iron. But beyond Europe's borders, in lands stripped by empire, the spirit of invention refused to die. In India, where colonial policies had dismantled local industries, inventors continued to improvise. Spinning wheels redesigned to work with local cotton, looms rebuilt from memory after British bans destroyed weaving guilds, forges kept alive by ancestral knowledge. Their resistance was innovation, their craft was rebellion. In West Africa, blacksmiths in the Yoruba kingdoms retooled their forges to produce agricultural equipment instead of weapons, blending ancient metallurgy with new European techniques. Across the Atlantic in the United States, enslaved and freed black inventors contributed uncredited brilliance to America's machinery. Lewis Latimer, born to parents who fled slavery, would later refine the carbon filament, giving light bulbs their practical longevity. Yet his name was buried beneath Edison's fame. Sarah Boone, a black dressmaker, improved the ironing board into the form still used today. But her story was never told in the factories that profited from her design. The pulse of innovation was universal. But history only had ears for those who owned the narrative. As the gears of industry turned faster, the cost of progress became unbearable. The revolution that promised prosperity began devouring its own creators. Children with soot-streaked faces worked 18-hour days beside machines they could barely understand. Women lost their hearing to the ceaseless clatter of looms. Inventors who lacked the means to patent their work watched as wealthier men took credit and profit. Yet the spark of creation refused to extinguish. In Germany, a shoemaker named Nicholas Otto tinkered obsessively with an idea for a new kind of engine, one that used internal combustion rather than steam. His idea was shaped by decades of collective trial and error, by artisans and mechanics who experimented in barns and basements. When the first combustion engine roared to life, it was not a single man's triumph, but the culmination of humanity's restless curiosity. In Japan, the Meiji Restoration unleashed an industrial awakening powered by hybrid innovation. Local inventors fused Western machinery with centuries of craftsmanship. A Kyoto watchmaker built the first Japanese clock using scraps of metal and gears imported from Holland. His workshop would later evolve into one of the earliest mechanical industries of Asia. In Latin America, inventors adapted imported machines to local environments. Chilean miners engineered portable steam pumps. Brazilian artisans crafted sugar presses with self-lubricating gears. Innovation was no longer a Western monopoly. It was a global dialogue whispered through smoke and steel. Yet as the 19th century marched toward its end, a new kind of invisibility took hold. Not just of the nameless workers, but of the women, colonized peoples, and working-class inventors whose ideas were consumed by corporate machines. Patents became weapons owned by companies rather than creators. The act of invention transformed from a spark of imagination into a legal battlefield. The age of industry had birthed not only machines but systems that decided who would be remembered and who would vanish. In laboratories lit by gas lamps, brilliant women worked behind the curtain. Mary Keyes, the first American woman granted a patent for weaving straw with silk, was soon overshadowed by male industrialists who copied her method. Ada Lovelace, the daughter of Lord Byron, envisioned a future where machines could think, the first algorithm ever written, yet she died before the world recognized her as the mother of computing. The hidden inventors were not just laborers now, they were thinkers trapped in societies unwilling to acknowledge them. In colonial factories, inventors were stripped not only of credit but of dignity, their cultures rebranded as primitive, even as their techniques powered the empire's wealth. British textile barons built empires from Indian cotton and African labor, while claiming the glory of invention for themselves. The Industrial Revolution was both a miracle and a theft, a dawn built upon shadow. And yet, even through injustice, progress carried the fingerprints of the forgotten. Every bolt tightened, every wheel turned, every engine fired carried within it the trace of 1,000 unknown creators. The railway that connected London to Liverpool was a monument not to one man's genius, but to generations of miners, engineers, and carpenters. The telegraph that linked continents owed its life to the silent mathematical minds who calculated distances and resistances by candlelight. The electric light that illuminated the modern world shone with the combined brilliance of hundreds of unseen experimenters. Their anonymity is not absence. It is the foundation of everything we call civilization. As the 20th century dawned, the world looked at its machines with awe, never realizing they were built from centuries of shared human genius. From the looms of China to the forges of Benin, from the windmills of Persia to the coal pits of Wales. The revolution was never the property of a single nation. It was the inheritance of humanity. Now, centuries later, the smoke has cleared, and we look back at the towering monuments of the industrial age, the railways, the bridges, the engines, and we are told they were the works of great men. But listen closely, and beneath the echoes of their names you can still hear the whispers of the true architects. The girl who bent wire into the first safety pin, the craftsman who built a tool and gave it away, the farmer who turned hunger into invention. They are the invisible hands that shaped the modern world. The Industrial Revolution was not a moment of invention. It was a movement of human spirit, a symphony of countless unrecorded notes. And perhaps the greatest lesson it left us is this: progress is not born from power but from possibility. The nameless minds who built our machines were not driven by profit or fame. They were driven by need, by hope, by the refusal to accept the world as it was. They dreamed of a better way to work, to live, to connect. And in doing so, they unknowingly wrote the blueprint of the modern age. As the final embers of coal fade into the archives of history and digital light replaces steam, the hidden inventors of the Industrial Revolution still linger in our machines, in our cities, in our blood. Every click, every hum, every heartbeat of technology is an echo of their courage. Their names may be lost, but their spirit endures. In every act of creation, in every idea born from struggle. They remind us that history is not written by the loudest voices, but by the most persistent hands. And as we step into new revolutions and of data, of code, of artificial minds, we must remember the truth they left behind, that progress is not the story of the few, but the legacy of us all.